Hello and greetings, my friend. Welcome back to the next episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, live feed Q&A, live coaching program, helping you to be fit and live free. I'm Matt Schifferly, and today we are looking at kind of a muscle building checklist. I always like getting these little checklists and stuff and newsletters and stuff that just basically say if you want to achieve a certain result in life, make sure you're covering these bases. And that's certainly the case when it comes to building muscle, because as I talked about in my previous episode, how one should focus on building muscle and having a satisfying diet before attempting to try to lose weight in order to build beautiful strength. And a lot of times when people are struggling to build muscle, they often get stuck, hyper fixated on one or two important variables in the whole muscle building process, because it's not just about your weight and your reps and your sets and your program and what exercises you're doing. All of these things are very important, absolutely, but it's not like one or two things carries the lion's share of the influence in helping you do that. Instead, it's many different things. And a lot of times when you're struggling, it's because you're focusing too much on one or two things, like how much protein you're getting, and you're ignoring a lot of the other variables that are much more important for you in particular. So it's helpful to go through these checklists and be like, just make sure you're getting these things taken care of. And usually the thing that you're kind of sweeping under the rug and ignoring, like, yeah, okay, I got that. I'm sure I'm fine. Whatever. I don't care about that. A lot of times that's the thing that is actually holding you back, and that's what's going to be the next breakthrough for you. Also be answering your questions here, of course, so please come on in, ask me what I can answer. We are starting off the gate right here. Sardi's saying, I'm trying Taekwondo, but how can I build strength and muscles? Yeah, same way as everybody else. Strength training, my friends. Strength training, remember that the most important variable when it comes to building strength is that we are sufficiently working our muscles. We are challenging, as I like to say, your muscular work capacity. That's what we do to create the stimulus for hypertrophy. And that's where this checklist comes in, because a lot of these things can hold you back. But you're not going to build muscle because you do the right program. You're not going to build muscle because you have a protein shake or have the right exercises. Those things are important, but they're not solely responsible for what you want. Instead, it's applying mechanical resistance to the muscle with anything, any kind of exercise, any type of training, in order to sufficiently challenge your ability to use that muscle. So if I'm working my biceps, I've got to do something that challenges my ability to flex my elbow with a good amount of resistance and enough volume and stuff to get that muscle to the point where it's struggling to keep contracting. And that's how we create our stimulus. And it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing otherwise. That's how you be able to make things happen. So he follows up saying, so I mean, I just do calisthenics only? Do anything you want. Your body doesn't care what exercises you do. It just cares whether or not you're challenging your muscular work capacity. So you can do calisthenics like I do. You can do isometrics and bands and free weights and machines and stuff. We're often taught in our fitness culture that your ability to arrive at a destination depends on the vehicle you use to get there. But that's not how it works. That'd be like you saying, hey, Matt, I need to get to the airport. And I'm like, red pickup truck. You need to use a red pickup truck in order to get to the airport. You have no idea how to actually get there. You don't know the roads and the streets and the directions and everything, but you don't care. You're like, just red pickup. And you're like, really, is a red pickup? And then you go online and you get all these people saying like, oh, pickups are great, but something that's a station wagon will carry more luggage. And then you get into these debates over what car is the best thing. Meanwhile, no one has any idea how to actually get to the destination. And that's why understanding a fundamental approach in fitness is so vitally important. Because when you understand fundamentally how fitness and building muscle actually works, you then have the ability to say, okay, that's the thing I need to make happen. And then use whatever vehicle, whatever exercise, whatever diet, whatever method, whatever program, whatever routine that fits you best in order to achieve that objective. And so that's the power of it, is it gets you off of the hyperfixation, off of what vehicle you're using, and more onto how do you actually get to that point, that destination you want to achieve, and then use whatever vehicle fits for you. Because a lot of your success or ability to have success in anything in life, and especially fitness, depends on you doing whatever is best for you. What brings you into personal alignment? What works best for your preferences? What works best for your abilities? What works best for your resources, like how much time you have and equipment and stuff. If you came to me and you said, I want to build muscle, but I suck at calisthenics, I hate doing push ups, and I don't even have a pull up bar, but I've got these dumbbells. Well, I'm sure as hell not going to recommend calisthenics because I'm like, why would you do that? That would be the worst thing for you. Instead, you like those dumbbells? Fine, use those dumbbells. As long as that muscle is working, that's all that matters. That's all you need to have in place. And so that's why you want to focus on what do I need to do? What is the necessary implement? And then just do whatever you like, want, and can do in order to make that happen. So Raw Man here saying, hello, micro workouts more effective per week than full body workout, which exhausts you and makes you extremely tired. No, there is no such thing as a more effective way to go about your training. You can do it full body, you can do it split body, split routines, you could do it with a number of approaches, but you here are asking full body workout, which exhausts you and makes you very tired. Well, who says? There are a lot of people who will say the opposite of split routines, where they'd be like, oh, I do split routines, but I'm always exhausted. I'm always tired and sore. If I do full body routines, then I can only I do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday kind of approach. And then I have more time for recovery and I feel a lot better doing that. And that's why it's so important to listen to your own experience. Because if you do full body routines and I'm like, man, this stuff is just kicking my butt, I'm always sore, I'm always tired, I'm always exhausted. But if I split it up, that makes me feel better and it gives me a lot more ability to be healthy and challenge my work capacity and my muscles. Well, then there's your answer. Versus if you did it the other way and you're like, okay, I feel better doing it this way, or I feel better with this exercise. Listen to your experience, my friends, because we've long been conditioned that there's one best way to go about things, that there's a proper, or some expert is like, this is the best exercise, this is the best this is the best that. Doesn't matter, right? I can go on a soapbox tour all around the country saying how pull-ups are the absolute best exercise for the back. And they're the best thing you can do for your back and biceps, bar none. In fact, that's what I was writing in Beautiful Strength the other day, is a little bit of a spiel about how pull-ups are absolutely wonderful. But who cares what I say? It really doesn't matter. Because if you get on a lat pull down machine and you're like, wow, I feel this so much more in my back. Holy smokes, I can work so much harder on a pull down machine than I ever did with pull-ups. There's your answer. Full stop. Doesn't matter what the science says, doesn't matter what the experts say, doesn't matter what the influencers say. Your experience trumps all. It's what your experience is telling you. If you find it's easier and more enjoyable and more something you can do to do things a certain way, you do it that way. End of discussion. And it doesn't matter what some guy like me is saying to the contrary, because I'm not you. Your experience is a hell of a lot more important than my opinion and my thoughts on things. Zero, interesting question. Is it possible to stop having bloodshot eyes after doing exercise like handstands, even some bridge varieties? It's interesting that you're having those bloodshot eyes, my friends. That's something I have not really come across in my years of coaching calisthenics. I would say absolutely, because you're the first person I'm really hearing about it. I would say look to your breathing. If you're using a lot of that Valsalva maneuver and you're doing like this stuff when you're upside down and getting inverted, that's probably just creating a lot of pressure in your head, maybe popping a couple blood vessels or something like that. It's also something that maybe is due to the ability to be inverted a little bit. When we get inverted, we are essentially flipping our orientation to gravity. And a lot of times the body just needs to be conditioned to that. For years, things like in yoga and qigong and stuff have involved inversion for exactly that reason. So if it's something that's fairly new to happening to you, it may just simply be something you need to get conditioned to. It'll fix itself on your own. But also look to your breathing to make sure you're breathing smooth and relaxed as you're doing it. So here we go, muscle building checklist. Make sure you got all of these things to at least some degree and maybe improve upon them if you can. So point number one is, of course, tension control. Your ability to work your muscles effectively is always based on the foundation of how well you can send tension to the muscle, how well you can proactively contract the muscle. The big myth in our fitness culture is that it's the exercise that makes your muscles work, or it's the weight in your hand that makes the exercise work. And that's not at all the case. That's putting the cart before the horse. Instead, the tension in your muscle is put there by your nervous system. And your nervous system needs to be conditioned just like anything else. So if you have a hard time engaging your muscles properly or tightening them up, especially during a big range of tension, like you can flex your biceps with your arms bent, but can you do it with your arms straight? That shows a lack of tension control. And when you have a hard time proactively engaging and tensing up your muscles, nothing you do will ever work because you cannot create a sufficient stimulus for hypertrophy if you have trouble engaging that muscle to begin with. And tension control is like any skill. It can always be improved. It's not a black and white thing. It's not something where it's like you either got it or you don't. It can always be improved. I've been doing the calisthenics thing and working out for over 20 years. Calisthenics exclusively for over 16. And I'm still learning how to use my muscles better. So it's always a skill you can improve upon. But that's something that a lot of people don't fixate on. And the result is they're always using their muscle in the same habitual neural framework that they've always used. So if they're not using their biceps very much during their pull chain movements, chances are they're never really going to build bigger biceps, no matter how hard they work and no matter what program you do and no matter what exercise you do. It is vital that you feel the muscle working. Absolutely vital, because you can feel that contraction. You can feel it turn on. You can just flex the muscle right now and you feel it engaged. So when you are training, you want to feel the muscle working. And if you're not feeling it working, well, that is a sign that you've got a little bit of work to do as far as that tension control goes. There's lots of ways you can improve that. Isometrics, you can do tension control exercises as a warm-up, like shifting squats and stuff, or even just simply flexing the muscle before you do the set. So if you're going to do push-ups, get down on the floor, flex your chest, and then start doing your push-ups. Don't just assume the muscle is going to properly engage and contract because you're doing the right exercise or even using the right technique, because a lot of your technique is actually that very tension control. And if your goal is to just get the technique done or the exercise done without any attention to what you're actually doing with the muscle, then yeah, there's a fairly good chance, especially if you don't feel the muscle working all that hard, that you're just using other muscles and you're compensating in technique and you're just getting through the job, but you're not really concerned with how well you're using the muscle. And when it comes to building muscle, that's what's most important, is how well do you use your muscle? How well and effectively can you work it? Because it is a skill, and that's something we always want to be improving upon. So next is make sure you have a good range of resistance, because you want to be able to challenge the muscle under good amounts of resistance to create a lot of tension into it. And you want a good range. So you want whatever tools and whatever exercises you're using will allow you to work it relatively easy all the way up to stupid, insane hard. My general rule of thumb is make sure that you're using something that will sufficiently challenge the muscle somewhere between 5 to 20 repetitions. It's not a concrete number in the sand, but generally if you're doing an exercise and you can do more than 20, it's too easy. We need more resistance, more tension. But if you're struggling to get a couple reps, it's probably too hard. Let's go a little bit easier. And you should be able to adjust the resistance of whatever exercises you're doing accordingly. I just published a video the other day about why I don't do high volume calisthenics training. I don't give a damn if I can do 100 push-ups. It's, to me, I look at that as a largely a waste of time when it comes to building muscle and strength. It's the same exact thing as just going into the gym and lifting an empty barbell 100 times. Sure, it's hard, but who cares? It doesn't matter if it's hard. It's not going to be effective just because it's hard. We can't base our effectiveness of our habits off of just the fact that they kick our butt, because that's not how fitness actually works. Our body doesn't adapt to stress. Our body adapts to a stimulus. And sometimes the stimulus is stressful, absolutely, but we have to make sure we're actually telling our body to work in a particular way, not just, oh, this is totally kicking my ass. I could kick your ass a million ways from here till Sunday and never create really an effective stimulus for hypertrophy. That's always the laziest approach. It's ironic, but the laziest approach for an athlete, but also a coach, is to just make someone work extremely hard, because it means that you don't really care how you're working. You're not actually training for a goal. So back to the analogy of like, hey, how do I get to the airport? I say, just drive, burn as much gas as you can, use as much time as you can, just drive a whole lot and waste a lot of time. That's the approach, sadly, that a lot of people take with fitness. They come home and they're like, oh man, I used 3 tanks of gas today and I'm exhausted and it took me all day. Did you get to the airport? No, but I really pushed myself, so I'm sure that's what matters. No, it's not. What matters is, did you actually get to the destination? And ironically, when you know how to do that very well, you're actually going to put in a lot less work. And that's the thing that's most important, is the less you have to work in order to create an effective stimulus, the better, because hard work is a liability. The more you have to work in order to make something happen, the less success you're going to have and the less you're going to maintain it. We want to make sure we're working our muscles hard, but having everything else pertaining to that as easy as possible. So when you're using techniques that have a good range of resistance, you can make the muscle work extremely hard. You can also make it work easier and everywhere in between. And that's important. You want to use methods like that. You don't want to be utilizing things that are a fixed or a very narrow range of resistance, because now you're losing the ability to train at sufficient intensity and sufficient volume in order to create that stimulus. Most strength training methods will give you a good range, but some of them out there don't. And you want to be aware of those things and not so much avoid them, but just find something that's better. Sorry to say, following up from our earlier conversations, I guess. So when exercises, after you feel tired, is it just the beginning and creating tension and making the powerful muscle correct? Yeah. And so especially as a martial artist, like a big mistake that a lot of martial artists make is they spend way too much time strength training and conditioning. Aside from folks who are overcoming like a inherent weakness and whatnot, honestly, strength training is not really going to make that much of a difference in your martial arts career. Honestly, I know that's blasphemy for me to suggest, but especially the way a lot of martial artists go about it is they'll spend like 6 hours a week strength training and 2 hours a week in actual martial arts class. In which case, you're more a strength trainer. You're not necessarily focused that much on martial arts performance. Instead, you want to recognize that the bulk of your ability to be a good martial artist comes from your actual martial arts training, and then the strength training is supplemental. And even then, it's just basic push, pull, squat kinds of stuff. You don't need a whole lot of fancy stuff. I attended one time a workshop on strength and conditioning for skiing. And the person hosting it was kind of like a trial workout. He's like, yes, we meet 3 times a week, and every workout was 3 hours long. And I remember walking out of there going like, I'm not even going to ski for that amount of time in the season. Like, why am I spending more time strength and conditioning than I am doing the actual sport? Like, that doesn't make sense. That's overcommitment for something that honestly is not going to matter all that much. It's important. It does matter to a degree, But that's one of the things about being an athlete, especially in some sports that are more skill intensive, that strength and conditioning really doesn't matter that much. It doesn't move the needle to a huge degree. You want to make sure you're covering certain bases so you don't have weaknesses that are holding you back. But is many strength coaches understand, especially those in the business, they're like, dude, if you can go from deadlifting 315 to 405, it's probably not going to make one iota of difference in your kickboxing career. And that's what we want to recognize, is that yes, strength and conditioning, very good as a martial artist, but it's the actual martial arts training you want to focus on still. Mr. Blacktree, it's good to see you. Hey Matt, how important is it to balance push versus pull strength? What is a good balance? I have push-ups, pull-ups, or whatever. Yeah, just basically in balance. Whatever you're getting for repetitions and for volume is pretty much 1-to-1. I've seen some people say you need a lot more pull than push and stuff, but I haven't seen any evidence-based research to substantiate that. I think that's more of just a bro science anecdotal thing, which I don't think is bad. But if you're doing 10 sets of a push chain exercise in a workout and you're like, great, now I got to do 20 sets of pull chain or make it worthwhile. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so exhausting and take so much time. It's like, yeah, don't worry about it so much. But that's also where the tension and volume thing comes from too. A lot of people, when they're in calisthenics, they'll do push-ups and pull-ups, but that's kind of a mismatch when it comes to their programming. Because when I ask them, well, how many pull-ups are you doing? They're like, oh, usually 50 to 60 pull-ups at a time. Well, what about the pull-ups? I could get 4 or 5 pull-ups. So you're training light on push and heavy on pull is what you're telling me. Because if you're getting 50, 60 reps, that's lightweight, baby. And I'm not saying like a Ronnie Coleman, lightweight, baby, kind of, that is literally you lightweight. You're going to body pump classes at that point. You're in step aerobics. You're not really doing all that heavy strength training. And I know that I hurt a lot of feelings in the last video I talked about where I said I don't do high rep calisthenics because it is lightweight training. You're not training heavy. You're not really training that much for strength. And that hurt quite a few egos from people. But you can't get around the fundamental physics of what you're making your body do. If you can do a lot of repetitions, you're using low resistance and vice versa. So it's more important, not so much from the volume perspective of push versus pull, but the intensity perspective if it's way off. If you're getting 50, 60 push-ups and 4 or 5 pull-ups, you're going really light on one and really heavy on the other. So adjust accordingly. Make the push-ups harder, make the pull-ups easier for like assistance machine or seated pull-ups and stuff. So you're closer in the ballpark to itself where it's like, okay, I'm getting 12 to 15 of a push-up variation and 8 to 10 of a pull-up variation. Okay, great. It doesn't have to be exact, but you're much closer to the ratio for the strength demand and the intensity. And that's what's much more important rather than the volume demand. And if it's way out of balance, you're going to notice it too. You're like, oh yeah, I'm do a million push-ups every single day and I'll do 5 or 6 pull-ups whenever the mood strikes me. Of course, that's going to be out of whack. But as long as you're roughly 1-to-1 or 1.5-to-1 or something like that, you're good. You're fine with that sort of thing. It doesn't need to be like a particular number. It's good to see you. Thanks, Matt. I guess my vascular system has not adapted yet to be in an inverted position. Possibly, yes. Because whenever we're training, there's a lot of stuff in the body that's adapting without even our conscious awareness. Because of the pressure feeling in my eyes afterwards, hopes it gets used to it over time. Probably will. Yeah, I would say if it doesn't start to feel better in about 6 weeks or so, then look into other things like maybe you have pressure differentials or something like that going on, but should resolve itself in time. Zedrin Bing saying, Matt, any idea on how to grow a stubborn body part like neck muscles in upper up using the rings? Yeah, so as I was talking before about tension control, lots of times stubborn muscle groups that just don't grow are ones we have trouble engaging. So that's a big part of it right there. And this is why it's so important to feel the muscle working. A lot of times when I ask people, oh, my biceps are stubborn, my upper back is stubborn or whatever, it's like, well, how much do you feel it working during a pull-up or a row or whatever? And almost inevitably the answer is, not really. It's like, well, there you go. Fundamentally, you're doing the exercises, you're doing the program, but you're really not working the muscle very much. If you don't feel the muscle working very hard, you're not working it very hard. Bottom line. So being able to contract the muscle proactively, set the tension before your sets, and make sure you're able to feel it working is key. So in the case of your neck, that can be a little hard because one of the great things about calisthenics is that it naturally works our neck muscles because our body's always changing in our orientation to gravity. But you may be working neck specific exercises, wrestling bridges, or I've got a video on the YouTube channel about how to use a pad or a plyo box or weight bench for isometric neck training stuff. But again, you gotta feel that muscle working. If you're in a wrestling bridge and you're like, oh, it's all in my lower back, or I feel like it's pinching my vertebrae, but it doesn't feel like the muscles are working all that hard, it's too hard. You gotta make the exercise easier, a lot easier in most cases, because you wanna feel that muscle working. You can even just proactively tense your muscles up, flexing them, practicing that. And that gives you an idea of like, okay, that's how the exercise should feel, is when I'm tensing up the back of my neck muscles and stuff. And then you have resistance, because the only thing resistance does is it necessitates tension. It doesn't actually make tension happen in the muscle. That's from your nervous system. That's tension control. The exercise and the resistance you're using necessitates the tension. Just still important, but it doesn't directly make the muscle work hard. So I would look at the tension control aspect first and make sure that whatever exercise you're doing is not overloading your neck and is allowing you to apply resistance to the neck in a way that allows you to feel the muscle working very, very hard. Mr. Ben, good question. If you have been trained over 10 years, why are you so much smaller than Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman? Simplest answer, I'm not Jay Cutler and I'm not Ronnie Coleman. It's important, my friends, to always recognize that the results you achieve in anything in life, but especially in fitness, depend on who you are as a person, the person that you are. It's kind of like, Bruce Lee was one of my big, inspirations growing up, still is. People are like, why can't, people be like Bruce Lee? It's like, because he's Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee would have been successful if he was a goat farmer kind of thing. He was amazing as a martial artist, and he was a pioneer in so many ways because he was Bruce Lee. And when it comes to fitness, a lot of times people will utilize people like, what was his name? Oh, I'm blanking on it. I just had it the other day. But sometimes you'll have these individuals like, well, so-and-so does 1,000 push-ups a day and he's big and he's jacked and all this sort of thing. It's like, yeah, he's not big and jacked because he does 1,000 push-ups a day. He's big and jacked because he's, what's his face? Gosh, it's driving me crazy. Please let me know in the comments section that and stuff. But it doesn't matter. Like some people are like, well, they're on steroids and stuff like that. So what? Doesn't matter. If I took steroids, I still wouldn't look like them, because it's Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler or whatever, right? So much of your success in ability to achieve something depends on you, who you are as a person, what kind of life you're living, what kind of natural talents and abilities you have, genetics. There is so much, and I know people don't like to hear this, but you got to know it. There is so much of your ability to succeed that is coming down to dumb luck. I know this now for myself. Like if you asked me 20 years ago, Matt, why do you have the speed on the bike? Why are you so lean? Why do you have abs? Oh, it's because I work so hard, because I'm so disciplined. No, dumb luck. Most of my success in life has been complete luck, 100% random chance. My work and my efforts and my learning and everything like that is filling in the gaps, but it's really not going to matter all that much. And that's because what we're talking about here is the checklist to create an effective stimulus for building muscle. Now, that's only creating a stimulus. Whether or not that stimulus actually produces a result depends on a lot of variables you have no control over. And some of the variables you can have some control over, like diet, and sleep and stress reduction and other things like that. But the very best thing you can do in your workout is to create a stimulus. That's all you're going to do. Will that stimulus make you build muscle? Who the hell knows? There are millions of people all over the world who are effectively creating a great stimulus in their workout, and they're never going to get bigger and stronger. You're like, why not? It's like, well, I can strike a match, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to build a fire because I just dropped the match on a, concrete sidewalk. It's like, how come there's no big bonfire? Something must be wrong with the match. And you're just practicing lighting matches all day long. You're like, something must be wrong with this type of thing. It's like, doesn't matter. You've got a lit match. That's the best you can possibly do. So when it comes to your workout, you're trying to create a stimulus, challenging your muscular work capacity. That's what we're talking about today. But that's all you can possibly do in your workout. That is the very best thing you can do. And if that stimulus isn't being applied to the environment that is your body and your lifestyle and stuff that can help you build muscle, well, TS, you're just not going to build it. It doesn't matter what you do in your workout. It doesn't matter how well you're working your muscles, how hard you're working and stuff. It's just not possible. And I know that goes against the rhetoric that we have in our fitness culture. It's kind of maybe it's more of a Western thing. Maybe it's more of an American thing. Here, I grew up in America where we're taught you can make anything happen in your life. You can make your dreams come true. You can do anything you want, which is just not true. I can't do a lot of things. And this is one of the reasons why I think a lot of people should take up sports when they're younger, because everyone should experience that feeling of like, yep, you're not going to turn pro. You're not going to become a professional athlete. It doesn't matter how hard you practice. It doesn't matter how hard you're working. It doesn't matter what kind of tools you're using and stuff. It's just not going to happen. And that's what, the big lesson I learned as a bike racer. When I got into bike racing in college, I was not a very good bike racer. And I started to really invest in myself. I got much better practice. I got much better equipment. I worked my tail off and I got a hell of a lot faster as a bike racer. I had huge success in improvement in my collegiate racing career. And people are like, so are you going to turn pro? I'm like, no. What in the world? There's no possible way. And it's important to recognize that. It's important to feel what that's like, to be like, no, it ain't going to happen. There's just no way. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen when it comes to building muscle and strength, but I am saying that you have a certain amount of potential and ability. Chances are very good that's more potential ability than you think you have. You can probably achieve a lot more than you realize, because most people are grossly underutilizing their potential. But can you make anything happen? Nope. Nope. It's just because you want it and just because you do everything necessary, or everything you think is necessary, rather, doesn't mean it can actually happen. And that's for everything. So Mr. Benton follows up. So you're saying that genetics beats hard work? No, it's all everything. And that's the big lesson here, folks, is that when it comes to, especially like building muscle, like you've got diet, you've got sleep, you've got training, you've got programming, you've got skill, you've got all these sorts of things. Now, all of it's important. You need all of it. And the reason is because no one thing can overcome a deficiency of something else, right? So if I have a really crappy diet, nothing I do in my workout will overcome the detriments of the unhealthy diet. Okay. If I have a really crappy workout program, nothing I put in my diet will overcome the detriment of that. It's like, anything where you're building a car, for example. You can have the perfect wheels built for you, but that's not going to overcome the fact that your engine sucks, right? So every piece has its role to play, and no piece can overcome a deficit of another piece. You can have the greatest workout, and that's what I'm saying. You can have the greatest workout, you can have the greatest stimulus, you're doing everything perfect and awesome and wonderful and right. But if your sleep sucks, your genetics suck, your lifestyle sucks, your diet sucks and everything, you're still going nowhere because you're applying the stimulus to nothing. that can actually allow the adaptation to occur. You're creating a demand when you have a good workout program, but that's all you can do with a program is you're creating the demand. Whether or not your body will be able to adapt to that demand is a whole nother ball of wax. And sometimes you can allow it to adapt better by improving lifestyle, improving diet, improving your mindset, improving motivation, all those sorts of things. But yeah, there's non-responders for a reason in the scientific community. There's people who will always struggle with something, and who knows why, but it's always there because we all have that. We all have the things in life and fitness that we just somehow just can make happen easily, right? For me, I have no trouble staying lean. It's relatively easy for me to be lean. I don't need to diet. I don't need to do cardio. I don't have to focus on it or work on it at all. Being and staying lean, and even if I do get a little fatter, it's real easy for me to lose it. I don't even have to try, right? So we've all got that thing, right? And for some people, that's building muscle. And when you're talking about the folks who are at the upper echelons of anything in life, you're always talking about someone who, for whatever reason, that came easy for them. So pro bodybuilders, despite the genetics, despite the drugs, despite everything else, they're easy gainers. They just build muscle really easily, much easier than everyone else. And that's why they're there, right? And we all have the thing that we can achieve, but we got to really work at it, right? And then we also all have that thing that no matter what we do, no matter how hard we work, it's just not going to happen. For me, that's flexibility and mobility stuff. I've always been tight, especially like in my hamstrings and stuff. When you sometimes in gym class, you have those sit and reach boxes, the sit and reach test. I could never touch the little paddle that measures your mobility. I was never flexible enough to even get a reading on the test. Now, I've been stretching my entire life. I've been a Taekwondoist, which is all about flexibility and all about mobility and stretching like crazy since I was 10. So I've been doing that for almost 40 years at this point. And I honestly, stretching has never helped me in the slightest. I've never gotten one iota of an improvement of stretching, especially flexibility in my hamstrings. Not at all. Never improved at all, no matter how hard I work, no matter what I put into it. So we all have that. And the big mistake that we often make when it comes to empathy is we think if something comes easy to us, then someone who's struggling with it, they must be doing something wrong. Something must be wrong with them. You see that a lot these days, especially with folks who struggle with weight, because I made that mistake for so many years. It's like for me, being lean and losing any sort of body fat, if I do achieve it, is real easy for me. It's not hard at all. So naturally, we all have our biggest data point of one, which is ourselves. And we think, well, if it's easy for me and that person over there is struggling with their weight and they're fat and out of shape, well, they must be doing something wrong. They must have something that's going, that they're lazy or they're weak or it's a moral thing and stuff. That's not at all true. It could be, they could be a relatively weak individual and they need to strengthen their inner resolve or something, but probably not. Actually, if anything, the person who is struggling the most is actually stronger than everyone else because they've done far more homework. They've done so much more work. They've tried so many more things. The person who got jacked doing nothing but push-ups is actually one of the worst strength coaches you could possibly have because they're just going to say, just do a bunch of push-ups. Work for me. Right? They don't know the other stuff that could be involved into it. And that's why the old adage is true, is that those who can do are sucky teachers. And those who can't do are really good teachers because they've got to go into it on much deeper levels to get one iota of improvement. And that's why they can understand it so much better and help other people. And so that's just recognizing the reality of a situation. It's something that you need to recognize about the human condition is that this fitness thing is not a level playing field. It is not fair. There are people out there who look at a piece of pie and they gain 10 pounds of fat. I can eat junk food all day long and still be pretty lean. Is it fair? Nope. Is it in my control? Nope. Is it because of anything I'm particularly doing? Nope. It's genetics. It's down to the luck of the draw a lot of the times. But that doesn't mean that hard work and improvement and learning things doesn't matter, because I can certainly improve things a lot. I went from 150 pounds, scrawny, skinny, soaking wet, to on a good day, I'm almost 200 pounds now. Still very lean, so it's all muscle. It's almost all muscle, right? Maybe a couple pounds of fat or something. That has been nothing but gut busting hard work on my part and learning and really diving into things. So building muscle is one of those things for me that's middle ground. Like, it's not something that's darn near impossible for me to do, but I'm certainly not a genetic disposition for it. I'm not a gifted muscle builder by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I'm not going to be, a muscle building poster child under any circumstances. Even probably if I did take steroids, which I have no desire to do, but even then, it probably wouldn't matter all that much, because it's still working with a fairly low baseline of something to build off of. Joseph Bello coming on saying, a friend of mine does high rep push-ups like 100 or even 200. He thinks this is good. I told him that he thinks 100, 200, he does better. Told him 5 to 20 reps intensely. I get a good workout from doing the low reps with intensity. I worked out yesterday, just did 2 sets for 10 to 16 rep on my exercise isometrics after a little warm-up, little sore today. Yeah. So a lot of times, volume and intensity, we got to recognize what objective you're going after, right? So when it comes to strength, that's tension, that's intensity. Right? If you're doing 100 push-ups, you're not going to get stronger off of that. You're going to get more efficient, yes. But the big mistake that we've all made, I've certainly done this a lot, is we think that getting good at an exercise means we're getting stronger. When we go from 50 reps to 60 to 70 to 80 repetitions, we think that means I'm getting stronger, and it doesn't. Because when you are doing an exercise, fundamentally, you're just telling your body, get better at doing this exercise. It doesn't mean you're getting stronger. It doesn't mean you're getting better or building muscle or anything. It just means you're getting better at the exercise. What you want to be doing is looking at, do I achieve the fundamental objective to a higher degree? That's what's important. Because, not to mention the fact that it's real easy to cheat your way through it and compensate through things. Back in the day when I was doing the high rep stuff, I know that I was compensating. I was using easier push-ups. My range of motion was getting shorter. I was utilizing a wider hand placement. I was using momentum. I was using my hips. I was doing everything I could to get those reps to go up, because I thought that meant that I was getting stronger. And no, it just meant that I was getting more push-ups. Whether or not I was actually getting stronger was up to luck of the draw, a crapshoot. Because I had thought, well, if I get better at the exercise, that means I'm getting stronger. The muscles are getting stronger. No, the muscles are getting stronger if they hold more tension. That's what strength actually is. If you can hold more tension in the muscle, that means you're getting stronger. And a lot of times when that happens, your reps go down, because tension and volume, or intensity and volume, are always on a seesaw from one another. But you got to be careful. If you've got your ego attached to a metric, like how many push-ups you can do, you don't care about getting strong anymore. You don't care about building muscle. You care about doing more reps. I think it's called Goodhart's Law. I could be mistaken about that. Might be something else. But the law basically states that when you use a metric to measure your progress, that metric ceases to be a good measure of progress when that metric is your goal. So if you want to build muscle and strength, and you're like, okay, I've got a lot of different metrics I can use, but how many push-ups I can do is a metric that I'm particularly interested in. Okay, my goal is to do 100 push-ups. The second you make a metric the goal, it's no longer a good way to measure progress. Same thing happens when people are trying to get leaner and they get hyperfixated on the scale. Once that scale becomes the goal, like I want to get to 170 pounds or whatever, that's no longer a very good, reliable metric for actual progress. Because now you've invited all kinds of compensation and all kinds of tricks and ways to work around to get that metric to be better. Oftentimes those compensations will compromise the very result you're after. Okay, so case in point, when I was making the number of push-ups I could do, the goal that I was after, I was compensating my technique and using easier push-ups so much that, if anything, I was compromising my ability to get stronger. I was, looking back now in hindsight, 2020, I was actually getting weaker. And I should have noticed this, because my ability to do punches and all these other sorts of things for my push aim was actually getting worse. But I didn't care, because my numbers were going up. So the moment I made the number of push-ups I could do my goal, that ceased to be a good metric for how much success I was actually achieving. And that's why it's so important to have an objective-based approach rather than a method-based approach. Because again, you don't care if you're successful. You're not trying to get stronger. You're not trying to build muscle. You're just trying to get good at the exercise. You're trying to satisfy the ego from a metric standpoint. And at that point, you're just wandering around aimlessly, hoping you're going to get the success you want through dumb luck. John O'Brien, morning from Australia. Thank you very much, John. I may be going out to Australia for a Taekwondo thing in the next couple of years. Maybe I'll look you up when you're on out there. Hopefully so. Let's see here. I know I'm getting a little off topic here, but you guys are asking such great questions here. Love how you get so deep into the weeds with this stuff. Com Jacko saying, hey coach, what is the best train split for building muscle? Whatever one you can stick to, my friends. So that goes along with a checklist for building muscle, is employ methods or exercises or routines that you can just stick to. I don't care what split you do. I don't care if it's full body training, push, pull, left and right side even, or upper lower body split, whatever. The number one objective of a good workout routine is, can you just get in the work? That's it. Because I always said, a good workout routine is like the launch pad for a rocket. It creates stability and it points you in the right direction. That's it. That's all your routine is good for. It doesn't build muscle. It will not build you strength. It will not improve performance. It has no bearing whatsoever on your success, other than ensuring that you have stable, consistent habits that are pointing you in the right direction. In other words, helping you achieve the objective by, giving you exercises and programming that gets you in the right general ballpark. If you want to build strength, how much tension is in your muscle, then doing 100 gazillion push-ups at a clip is not the way to go. You're pointed in the wrong direction, because you're going after the ability to do so many reps. You're not trying to actually get more tension in the muscle. So that's a case of, I'm headed in the wrong direction. Bad routine. Well, it's something that is really great, but boy, I have trouble sticking to it. I can do it consistently for a few weeks, and then after that, the kids get sick, and then after that, boss is riding my tail at work, and I can't get things and stuff. Bad routine. If you have trouble sticking to it, and it's making you do exercises that are not in alignment with your goal, that's not a very good, well laid out routine. Which means it wasn't a good routine to begin with, or it was a good routine, but now your circumstances change and you need to change your routine to stay stable and keep you pointed in the right direction. But that's the thing to recognize about a good routine. It just needs to provide that stability, so you're consistently working your muscles in a productive way, and you're challenging the work capacity of those muscles to stimulate hypertrophy. That's all your routine's good for. That's all you can get out of it. If you got those two things, check that box off, because that's all you can get out of it. And this is why we're going through this checklist, is because a lot of people have a perfectly good routine and they're doing great exercises and they have ability to really push themselves and all these other sorts of things, but they're still struggling to get the results they want. So they keep rehashing the thing that they've perfected, that they've got to a pretty darn good level to begin with, at which point you're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. You're not going to get any better than that. If your routine is something you can pretty consistently stabilize and get the work in, and it's employing exercises and techniques that keep pointing you in the right direction, well, your routine's as good as it's going to get. You always can tweak things a little bit. Can always make little adjustments. I'm to this day, I'm still like, you know what? I find that if I do, bicep curls after my pull-ups, I can work my biceps better than if I did them before. I just feel that way. Okay, great. There's always little tweaks you can figure out. And again, most of that information is going to come from your experience anyway. But if you're getting those two things, congratulations. Your routine is great, and it's not going to get any better than that. Joseph coming on again, say, Matt, 20 reps is high reps to me. Yeah, I would generally say that's the way to go. Relative to goals, of course. Some people, 50 reps is high reps. It depends on what you're going after. My routine is made of 4 or 5 exercises at most. It takes about 30 to 35 minutes at most. Yeah, and that's pretty much what my approaches are these days as well. Hell, 30 minutes is still a long workout for me. I just don't have the time or the energy to go much beyond that. Usually my routines, I would say, are probably 3 to 4 exercises most of the time. 3 to 4. Hell, this morning it was 3. I had stretch outs on the suspension straps. I had seated hip bridges for my glutes and hamstrings. And I did some side plank hip lifts on the suspension straps. I had 3 sets of the stretch outs, 3 sets of the extensions, 2 sets of the lateral chain. Took me like 10 minutes. That was my workout today. So it doesn't need to be a lot, but was I able to sufficiently challenge the work capacity in my muscles? Yes, great. Mission accomplished. Will that actually make a difference in how my body looks? Will I actually build muscle from that? Who the hell knows? My diet has not been absolutely the best lately. I could probably certainly be eating more. It's been lackluster these days because I've been sick for the past month or so. And, stress is a little bit high. I'm still dealing with some stress and anxiety over several things, work related and stuff, just working too much. So whether or not that effective stimulus will help me build muscle, I hope so. But I could probably do things a little bit better to increase my chances there. But as far as the workout goes, mission accomplished. Can't do much better than that. I was challenging my muscular work capacity, worked it with high intensity, with the stretch outs. I was getting like 6 to 8 repetitions. The hip extensions, I like a little more volume with that. I was about 10 to 12 there, and 10 repetitions on the side planks and stuff. It's working the muscle really good, getting a good degree of range with those things. Range of tension was good. Yeah, that workout was about as good as it could have been. Could always be a little bit better. Could have pushed a little bit more, but it's not like it would have really mattered that much in the long run anyway. But that's a little routine that I've been doing now consistently for several weeks. So it's as good as it's going to get. So let me see what else we got. Big range of motion is another thing that we can employ for helping to build muscle and stimulate hypertrophy. Now, this may be one of those correlation versus causation things, but generally speaking, when you are talking about strength training, particularly for building muscle, the more range you use in a muscle, the better. However, I will put a little asterisk on that and say it's not about range of motion. It's about range of tension. Range of tension is a little bit different because what that means is, do you have the muscle working through a big range while maintaining tension in the muscle? Okay, so let me give you an example that's quite common in the world of calisthenics, where people will be doing a pull-up and they'll come down, and at a certain degree, when they've got a coach screaming in there saying lower, 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 they'll get lower, but they do it by releasing the tension in their muscles, and they effectively end up in one of those dead hang type of ideas. Or maybe they've got tension in some muscles in their pull chain, like in their arms, but their back gives way or something like that. So they're using a big range of motion in that case, but the range at which they have tension is being compromised. So that's why I always talk about range of tension, my friends, because it's a lot harder to keep tension in a muscle in an elongated position. It's just physiologically, that's how our body works. You can improve it, absolutely. And that's why it's important to practice that and to emphasize it, because when you can maintain tension in a muscle through a longer range of motion, not only does that have a heavy correlation over towards, again, a better hypertrophic stimulus, but it also makes the exercise feel a hell of a lot better. It takes a lot of stress out of the joints because your muscles are effectively the shock absorbers for your joints, as long as they have tension in them. And it can also potentially help with mobility as well. So use exercises that can potentially use the muscle through a big range. And a lot of times people throw around that idea of full range of motion and big range of motion and stuff like that. But a lot of times that is more or less a little bit arbitrary. If you're doing a bench press and you come down and the chest and the bar hits your chest, that's a full range of motion for a bench press, but it's not the full range of motion for the muscles. Because if you switch to dumbbells or cables, for example, you can get back even further and get even a few more inches. So a lot of times range of motion is more subjective or dependent on the actual exercise that you're doing. But that doesn't, don't lose sleep over that. Basically use as much range in the muscles as you can for the exercise that you have at hand and according to the tools that you're using. Don't worry too much of, well, I can still get a little more range in a muscle, but this piece of equipment or the exercise is limiting. That's fine. That's fine. But just focus on range of tension and getting more. Don't do like I foolishly did for so many years where I'm like, yeah, all right, more weight on the bar or more repetitions and stuff. And if you're actually honest, it's like, are you really using as much tension as you can or as much range as you can? Like, sure, you got 50 push-ups, but was your chest on the floor every single rep? It's kind of like the old question people used to ask me is like, how close should my chest get to the floor? It's like, if it's close, it's not close enough. Like, I want it on the floor. I want it touching the floor, kind of thing. And again, you can't do that if you're ego lifting. If you're like, but I can't do as many repetitions that way. Now, I personally love that. I love using an exercise where I change the technique or make it a little bit harder some way, and suddenly my reps plummet down. It's like, oh, that's a lot harder that way. Yes, because that makes it a lot easier to create that stimulus in the muscle by challenging the work capacity. Remember, when you're making the exercise easier for the sake of boosting up a metric, then you're effectively making it harder to create the stimulus you want. Okay, I'll say that one more time. When you're making the exercise easier to fulfill a metric, you're making it harder to build muscle and strength. That's why it's important to know what exactly you're training for. I had a guy who was training for a PT test for police academy, and I trained him exactly the opposite of everybody else I trained. Because I'm like, dude, if you don't need your chest getting to the floor, don't. If you can do it with a wider push-up, do it. If you don't have to come all the way up, do that. We're going to make this push-up as easy as we can possibly get away with. Because the only thing he cared about was, can I do X number of reps within the time limit to pass a PT? He wasn't concerned with building muscle and strength. He just wanted to pass the test. So that's why I was like, okay, that's your goal and objective. We're not going to train the way we usually train here, because if we did that, your numbers would plummet and you would not succeed in achieving that particular goal. That's why it's important to understand really hard exactly what you want to go after. If you want to get leaner, focus on getting leaner. Don't focus on weight. If you want to get stronger, focus on the tension in the muscles, not just how many push-ups you can do, because you don't want to just leave it to chance through correlation versus causation. Justin Lucas with a good question saying, what are your thoughts on using muscle electrodes for high intensity workouts of short duration? I use body weight for building a foundation and electrodes for isolation and hypertrophy and stuff. Yeah, EMS, electronic muscle stimulation, got a long history in therapeutic approaches. I actually know a guy out here in Denver. He's a traveling trainer, and he has a full-on suit that he puts his clients in and works, the muscles through the suit. Fundamentally, what you're doing when it comes to these electrodes is you're using a prosthetic nervous system. Okay, so when you contract a muscle, you are electronically making the muscle contract through your nervous system. Your nervous system is literally an electronic system. That's why we got electrolytes like sodium and potassium and stuff. So when you contract a muscle, your nervous system, starting with the brain, central nervous system, down your spine, out through the peripheral nervous system, is sending electrical signals to your motor units in your fibers, and that's making them contract. So when you use the electrodes, you're basically doing it externally. You're doing the same thing, which is good because, as I've always said, that if something does the same thing as everything else, that means it can actually work and be effective. If it doesn't do the same thing as everything else, then it's not going to be effective. So yeah, I've played around with it. It's a lot of fun. It again boils down to, do you like it? So if you enjoy it, go for it. But you're fundamentally doing the same thing as regular strength training. So it's not really anything unique and different, because that's what your nervous system does. You're just taking your internal nervous system out of the picture and you're putting on an external nervous system. So have fun with it, experiment with it, and see what you can do for different programming options too, as well, when it comes to how long the contractions are being held for and the intensity and stuff. My Mr. Black Tree's coming on saying, been doing deficit push-ups for more range of motion. Feels great. Yeah, big deficit. Remember that a lot of the range of motion also comes from your joint positions too. So a lot of times when people, I've had a lot of videos out there about how I'm critical of using push-up handles, about how they can ultimately hold you back. And I very rarely will ever use handles or push-up handles for that reason. And people will often cite, well, I get more range of motion from them. Yeah, but it's not because of the handles. It's because your shoulders come back. When people often come down further, they're thinking, oh, my chest is getting lower. It's like, no, your shoulders are getting back further. That's where the actual range in your chest is coming from. Yeah, you're getting lower, but that's why. It's not because you're in some sort of like deficit to your hands. So when you're doing push-ups, even without handles or on chairs or something of that nature, make sure you're still pulling those shoulders way back, and you can still get a big range of motion in that chest as well. It's something to always just be mindful of. That way we don't become too dependent on that particular exercise or that particular piece of equipment in order to feel like we're getting a benefit from something. But we can get those benefits many, many different ways. And it's always good to have options, because sometimes a particular option that's been good for you may not be so good for you down the road for any number of reasons. Mr. Blacktree says, when I was in the military, it was terrible form, but counted as a rep in the PT test. As a civilian, I had to retrain myself how to exercise properly. Love that that feedback there, Michael. Thank you very much for that. That's why a lot of times, I get clients all the time. They're like, dude, I want to, train like a Navy SEAL. I want to train like in the military. It's like, the military is not something we should model a fitness test after. It's like, well, those Navy SEALs are so tough and everything. It's like, yeah, but you got to remember that the whole point of military boot camp is to get you to quit. They're not trying to get you in shape. The purpose of military boot camp is to weed out the people who are not going to be sufficient for military service. That's what that point is. They're trying to get you to quit. And so that's, again, why it's important to recognize, why was this program created? What was the objective it was trying to fill? Military boot camp is not a fitness spa. And that's why I tell my clients all the time, it's like, if you think I'm going to be a drill sergeant for you, yelling in your face and forcing you to do things, yeah, another thing coming. Because ultimately, I can't force you to do anything. And I have no interest in forcing you to do things when it comes to fitness. You sign up into military boot camp, like going into Marine boot camp and stuff. Yeah, you're going to get that treatment. You're not going to, or at least you shouldn't be trying to get that treatment in a gym, at 24-hour fitness, because it's a completely different environment for a completely different purpose. And so that's why I tell clients all the time, it's like, look, I'm going to tell you, do this routine like 3 times a week. But if you come to me and you're like, yeah, I'm not doing the routine, I'm not going to force you to do it. I know I can't, so I'm not going to waste my time and energy trying to force you to do it. But instead, I'm going to be like, all right, maybe we need to change the program. Because remember, as I said earlier, routines are just like launch pads for a rocket ship. Stability points you in the right direction. If you can't stick to it, you don't have that stability. We need to change the routines so you do. But ultimately, that launch pad does not make a rocket go into space. When I was younger, I had those model rockets that we used to light off in, farmers' fields and stuff like that. And it's the engine in the rocket that makes it go up into the air. The launch pad just gives you stability and points you in the right direction. That's all it did. It was important, but it doesn't make the rocket actually launch. Sometimes we would have the engines faulty or something. It's like, what's wrong with the launch pad? Nothing. It's the actual rocket that has the flaw. So it's important to recognize that we're trying to build a good rocket with these lists, having tension control, good range of resistance, good range of tension, making sure that you have enough intensity and enough volume to challenge your muscular work capacity. That's the next thing on my list. Lots of times the advices in our fitness culture about here's how you build muscle, do this much work. That's kind of a ballpark guessing game at best in most cases, especially from a coach who doesn't actually know you, like a YouTube video or a podcast. When someone's like, this is how many sets to do, this is how many reps to do, this is what you do in order to build muscle. It's kind of like a general guessing game to get you in the ballpark. But that's the beautiful thing about having an objective-based approach to training, is you're no longer guessing. You're doing what it takes to actually achieve the result you want. So some exercises, in some circumstances, in some levels of experience, in some muscle groups, you may need more volume, okay? Other times you may need less. Like today when I was doing my stretch outs on the band, I was trying to really challenge the work capacity of my abdominals and my back, right? Now, how many sets does that take? Damned if I know, because you never train the same body twice. Some days you've got more energy and more ability. Some days you have less. So that's why I don't go by a general recommendation. Even now, when I train people, I've kind of been adopting the method when I train folks. And they're like, how many reps do I do? I'm like, I will tell you when you can stop. Because honestly, if I say do 10, I'm guessing. I am guessing. Even if I look at their program and I was like, well, you did 10 last time, let's try for 12. That's still a guess. I'm still guessing. Like, I don't know, do 10 and cross your fingers and just hope that 10 was the right number. But instead, when we go after it, it's like, I want you to first set here, let's go for about 80% fatigue. I want you to lift until you're starting to have trouble lifting the weight. Not to failure, but just getting that real hard grind in there for one set. It could take 8, it could take 10. Hell, sometimes I've even been surprised and they get 15. And I'm like, holy hell, dude, that was amazing. It's like, yeah, I got some really good sleep the past few times. I've been eating amazing. I'm super, feeling good today. I'm like, yeah, you are. If I told you to do 10 reps, I would have been calling you short. I would have shortchanged. I would have limited you. Thank goodness we didn't do that. But on the other hand, I could say, well, do 12 repetitions and they're petering out at 6. It was like, whoa, what happened there? It's like, well, I'm using more range of motion and I use a harder grip. And I also didn't really sleep all that well last night. And I'm kind of stressed from this thing at work and stuff. It's like, well, then what point would I actually have in telling you to do 12 reps? You couldn't even do 6. There's no point in telling you to do 12. Now you feel like you failed. Now you fell. No, we're just getting the muscle to a good point where it's working really hard. Great. You did it in 6. Awesome. Mission accomplished, right? So that's why when it comes to using intensity and volume, sometimes I'll come into the gym or working with a client. I'm like, wow, you're really good today. Okay, let's crank up the intensity. Let's add more weight to the dip belt. Let's use a harder technique. Let's use a bigger range of motion, deficit, pistol squats, whatever, right? It's like, let's make it harder because you've got the strength today. Let's ramp up the intensity. It's like, okay, yeah, and I'm still, I've been doing 3 sets and I'm still going strong. Well, keep going, buddy. Keep going. Go until you start to hit that wall, when your ability starts to default. But if you hit that in 2 sets, well, you hit that in 2 sets. Should I do more? No, you got it. Mission accomplished. You hit the target, you're done, right? So that's why you want to have enough intensity so that you're working the muscle hard. Good general rule of thumb is like 8 to 15 repetitions or so. And, enough volume so that you're putting the muscle to a good degree of fatigue. So how many sets does that take? Well, as many as it takes, right? If you ask me how to get to the airport, I'm not going to say drive for exactly 28 minutes. because that's usually the way we approach things in fitness. We tell people how much work they should do, but whether or not that's actually the amount of work they either can do or need to do to achieve that objective is kind of a ballpark estimation at best, a lot of times. Instead, I'd much rather say, get to this destination. Well, how many sets and intensity? Like, as much as it takes. If it takes you more sets to get to that point, do more sets. I'm not going to tell you to shortchange yourself. But if you get there in 2 sets, well, you got there in 2 sets. Great. You hit the objective. That's the thing that makes that stimulus happen, not how many sets and reps you do. So use enough intensity to really put some resistance on the muscle, and use enough volume to create that degree of fatigue and that exhaustion in the actual muscle itself. And that's what you want to adjust and sometimes adapt, but that's what you're doing to achieve that objective. And the final point is allow for adaptation, because the things you need to do to sufficiently create that stimulus are going to be different from one day to the next. Generally, you're going to have a good ballpark understanding of what it takes for you. Most people, they're going to have sufficient volume with 2 to 3 sets per exercise if they're using the standard 8 to 12, 15 repetitions. Okay, great, general ballpark and stuff. But don't use that stuff as like the dogmatic approach of, well, Matt said this is the volume and things that I need to do. No, use your own experience and you listen to your body. If your body's good to keep going, if you're cranking out those pull-ups like they're nothing, you're like, God, these feel light today, add intensity. Or if you're feeling like, gosh, I could just keep going. Like after 3 sets, I feel like I'm still ramping up. Why stop? You've still got so much more potential. Don't limit yourself. Don't quit early. Keep going. But it's the other way too. If you jump up on that pull-up bar and you're like, all right, weighted pull-ups, here we go. And you get 2 reps on the weighted pull-ups, you're like, whoa, I'm not feeling myself. That's okay. Not weighted today. Maybe even do assisted pull-ups today. Wow, holy smokes. I don't know what's going on, but muscle's not feeling it today. And if you're starting to circle the drain after just a couple of good hard sets, well, then you're done. Why force yourself to do more work that's just redundant in not creating much more of a progressive stimulus? So adaptation goes a long way at helping you actually hit the target you're after. Shamar Thomas saying, Matt, how would you advise someone to train whose goal is to build durable and fatigue resistant legs? Very good. Legs are like Swiss Army knives, my friend. They are capable of such a wide range of ability. So that's why a lot of times people sell their legs short when they're only doing heavy squats, or they're only doing plyometrics, or they're only running and stuff, because your legs are capable of strength and power and endurance and a whole bunch of other things. So here's what I would recommend you do is make sure you're strength training your legs first and foremost, because you'd be surprised a lot of people when they're like, I need really great leg ability for endurance sports and stuff. I'm like, what's your strength training routine like? And they're like, I just run hills, I guess. It's like strength train. So make sure you're getting a good amount of resistance on the muscles. Make sure you're using as much range of tension as possible. Getting low and deep, getting that knee as far forward in your lunges as possible, as long as your front heel is staying on the ground. Basically ass to ankle. You're trying to sit on the back of your shoes as much as you can. Make sure you have a good degree of tension in your calves and good degree of tension in your hips. And it's the hips one that usually leaves people more susceptible to injury and early burnout and fatigue, is because so much of your ability to stabilize and have control in your endeavors, it depends on how well you can engage and use your hips, because that's a common weak point for a lot of people. And third is train with a variety of power, volume, and intensity. So I would start off with something like really hard style jumping exercise, building up that power, a couple sets of 9, let's say, jump lunges or squats or jumping up on a box if you like. Then I would go into some more heavy strength training, probably 5 to 8 reps max on some sort of heavy leg training. And then I would do some sort of a leg finisher, just one set, pushing a weight sled, maybe a hill sprint, or just some really high rep thing, like doing 50 squats or something, just burn them out. And that's going to give you more of a broader stimulus. That's the key word here, a broad stimulus for your legs. Because when you train a narrow stimulus of like, okay, I can squat 600 pounds, but I certainly can't sprint up a hill, and I have no power, and I have no stability and all that sort of thing, it's still going to be leaving you up to being a fairly fragile lower body. So train a broader stimulus in your training. Have, I would say for now, 3 leg exercises, and each one is train your legs for a different aspect of ability: power, strength, and endurance, for example, for right now. And that's what I would start you off with, not knowing what you can do and what resources you have, of course, but that's where I would start you off. All right, folks, I am done talking your ear off. Thank you so very much for listening. Best of luck in your workouts this week. Again, all the resources that I've been mentioning, all my books: Be Fit, Live Free, micro workouts, progressive and weighted calisthenics, grind style calisthenics, all the stuff that I have, even the quick reads I have, like push, pull, squat, and the Ultimate Minimalist Fitness Program. Link is down below, reddeltaproject.com. And let me know if you have further questions on that, reddeltaproject@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. And I will talk to you folks next week. Till then, be fit and live free.